Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me for pricing. Email tmosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today, we're discussing a watch launched in 2019. This is the Omega Seamaster Diver 300-meter chronograph, and it's a big one. 44 millimeters in diameter, it's 17.3 millimeters thick, and from lug to lug, it measures 52.7 millimeters with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. The end link of the bracelet is pivoted, so the total distance across the wrist here is still going to be 52.7 millimeters. We'll zoom out, we'll put it on my wrist, we'll get a sense of how it fits, and then talk about the features. It's a big watch, no doubt. You could see that my wrist is probably the smallest that could successfully wear this. So my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you can see that the watch wears just fine. It's very thick, and it's also very broad, but it does fit, and I would wear this comfortably and securely. That said, if your wrist is any smaller than mine, the lugs are going to overlap the edge of your wrist, and for me, that's usually the go, no-go point for watch fit. It's too fit, or I should say too fat, to be under a dress cuff or a tight sleeve, but a jacket cuff might be all right to fit over this watch. Taking a quick look at the design of the bracelet, it's familiar. We've seen this bracelet through the years since 1993. It debuted on that original Diver 300 meter back then. It used to be more rolled and rounded on the shoulder. Over the years, the tops have become more squared to the sides, which have given it more of a sports bracelet look, but we still have that staggered link alignment. We still have the polished intermediates that give it a little bit of a dressy ambiance, and you can see that we still have a conforming end link to mate it to the case without a gap between bracelet and case or any mismatch between form of lug, form of case, and form of link. So it's not an integrated bracelet, but it integrates nicely, if that makes sense. Here we have a little bit of a taper down the bracelet towards the clasp. Now you can see removable links here are fixed by screws, and we do have some intermediate sized links just in case you find yourself in between sizes, but you've got a lot of options. Take a look, there's a fold out all or nothing dive extension here, but then we have 9.6 millimeters of push button incremental adjustment. There's a little slider there, so you have quite a bit of total extension, but also the ability to fine tune the fit. Now internally, we have a single swing arm, twin trigger release, so it can't pop open. You have to press both triggers. The clasp, including the triggers, features a contrast of polished and satin metal. You can see the engraving on the clasp is still very deep and sharp, and it is a thick gauge steel clasp, so you've got a lot of security here. Rolling back to the case, lyre style lugs. We have seen them on many Speedmasters and Seamasters through the years. They have an inward and an outward bevel, and of course the outer bevel is usually polished. It continues through the mid case. It flattens and fattens at the end of the lugs. Mid case is all satinated. Most of the bezel is satinated, and you can see that we have the conical helium escape valve. You screw this out, and you can actually open it during a dive now with this generation of the watch. And so if helium accumulates in the watch when internal pressure exceeds external by 2 to 3 bar during your ascent, the valve, provided you've opened the outer valve, the inner valve will open and relieve that pressure so it doesn't discharge the seals and crystals of your watch. We have what look like they might be screw-down chronograph pushers. They're actually just shoulders to prevent shearing or damage, so you can operate this chronograph without screwing anything in or out. It's always available. It's still 300 meters water resistant. You can see that the pushers themselves are made of blue ceramic to resist scratching, and then we've got a blue ceramic insert on the bezel, and so that helps to prevent scratches. And then we've also got a bezel that has a very shallow knurling outboard. That's been maybe the one flaw in this bezel design since 1993. As enduring as this design has been, and it has been, the bezel is the one thing that maybe could have changed, as this shallow knurling is only easy to grip when your hands are completely dry. So you're going to want to set this before you need it. So before you dive, set your time and then get your hands wet. That's the best way, because once your hands are wet, this is a bit of a slippery bezel. That said, this generation of the watch has by far the best feeling and sounding 120 click bezel since the line was created. Let's have a listen. It feels just as precise and a little bit more mechanical and sharp than a Rolex dive watch bezel. We have a screw-down crown. All this is 300 meters, water resistant. The dial is laser cut ceramic, so the waves are cut using lasers. Then you can see a sunburst pattern is brushed on. and then this chrome-like metallic coating is applied. So we have this lovely matte luster. It's really quite cool. A metallic on a ceramic base. We have concentric patterns within the sub-registers, each of which has a calibrated metallic blue chapter ring. You can see there's a downwardly stepped blue ring outboard for reading minutes, seconds, and chronograph fractions of seconds. We'll do a quick loom shot here. As you can see, the whole dial is loomed, including sub-register hands, and you can tell that the watch is running in the dark. That should be mandatory on a dive watch. For some reason it's not, but Omega gets it right. You can also see that the minute hand and the bezel pearl are green, whereas all the other features are blue. That allows you to easily read them against each other at a glance in the dark. Now you can time 2 events concurrently with this watch. One, a 0 to 60 minute count up using the bezel, and then the other using the chronograph. Now we have a clean twin register designed like a vintage chrono, but it's a triple register chronograph with hours, minutes, and seconds. We've got hours and minutes coaxial with each other at 3 o'clock and then seconds at center. And we have these lovely metallic blue applique indices that add an upscale sheen to the dial. You can see right under the hands zirconium oxide, the chemical formula for ceramic, which is what this dial is. You can also note that the date disc is the same color as the dial, which is attention to detail at its best and a sign of good taste by Omega. They even printed the silver disc in blue. Taking a quick look, we see the so-called James Bond skeleton hands. Those were new for '93 when this model line originally debuted. The Diver 300 meter becoming over the last 30 years the most enduring Seamaster design of all time, partly because it rose to fame on the wrist of Pierce Brosnan during his 90s and early 2000s turn as 007. So these are sometimes known as the skeleton or Bond hands. Underneath the case back, we have an Omega Master chronometer, caliber 9900. So it goes through the Matas chronometer test. This is everything the COSC is, but then it's more. It's a 6-position test as a fully assembled watch. Remember, COSC is 5 positions as a bare movement. The watch undergoes winding efficiency, power reserve, chronometry, shock resistance, water resistance, and anti-magnetism tests to earn that master chronometer certification. And remember, it's not the fox guarding the hen house. Anyone can apply to become a master chronometer if they have a watch that is up to snuff, which is why Tudor is in the process of converting its production over to master chronometer now. Now you've got 2 barrels, automatic winding here. We've got a 60-hour power reserve. The twin barrels ensure that it doesn't surge and run fast when fully wound, nor does it slow down appreciably after 18, 24, or 36 hours like a single barrel movement can. It's braced against shock thanks to a rotor bearing rather than a jeweled staff, as well as a free-sprung balance and a dual-anchored balance bridge, so very shock tolerant. Anti-magnetic balance, balance staff, escapement, and silicon SI-14 hairspring. We have here a column wheel visible through a skeletonization in the bridge. The column wheel is responsible for engaging the different functions of the chronograph through cycling. So stop, start, reset. The column wheel means you really feel and hear the crisp actuation of the chronograph. We also have a vertical clutch engagement. So when you start, you see there's no jump to the seconds hand. That's because there's no play in a vertical clutch. So not only do you have a more precise engagement and a system that always resets perfectly to 12, but you've also got a system you can run full time if you just like to have your seconds along with minutes and hours at center. That's not a problem. 54 jewel movement, and you can see it features both polished and blackened screws with arabesque spiral Côte de Genève, machined but handsome bevels, and solarization atop the rotor bearing. The watch also has the tri-level version of the coaxial escapement, which makes it an excellent timekeeper, reduces maintenance requirements, and extends power reserve. And of course, George Daniels of Britain conceived this in the 70s, sold it to Omega in the 90s. Today, Omega has realized all the potential of the coax, and you can get the best of that coax right here. The movement also has a couple of subsidiary setting modes, one of which is the hacking or stop seconds, so you can set the watch to a reference time. But there's also a system that allows you to independently set the hour hand if you wish. You can even drive the date forward or backwards as you travel east or west. The watch keeps ticking. You know, we're still running the chronograph. Time is still being kept. The minute hand has not been displaced, but this allows me to change the time zone as I travel quite conveniently. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.